Hi, everyone, and welcome to our 20th episode of Behind the Curtain. Crazy to think that we've been doing this for 20 weeks, but we're going to keep doing it until we are back up and running and hopefully doing the pitch. So, if you are watching with us live, welcome. We would love to see you participate by sending any questions and comments you have into live chat down below. And if you're watching after hours, you can still send any feedback you have by commenting on the video, or you can also email us at info@majestictheater.com. We also recently uploaded a recording of Danny's latest play titled The Lady Slipper. So after watching this, go ahead and give that a view and tell us what you think of that. But tonight we have Jack Neary and, of course, Danny with us today.
Thank you,
Hey, guys.
Charlie.
Have fun.
Hi, Jack.
Hey, Danny, how you doing?
Good. Well, hopefully tonight we're going to be able to get through this.
I'm not hearing any of those spooky ghost things from last week. That's great. Excellent.
That's a good thing.
Good for Carly getting that fixed.
Yeah. So just briefly for you folks who are tuning in, my guest next week is Frank Aronson, and I'll give you a heads up. I've got a really great story about Frank's very first show with us at the Majestic that you'll enjoy. Anyway, Jack, welcome. Thank you for being a part of this.
Hey, I'm honored to be the 20th guest. I'm thrilled to be the 20th guest. I'm sure you did that intentionally. Let's save Jack for 20. That's what we'll do.
That's right. So here's a question for you. What have you been up to, and how are you staying creative during these COVID days? And
well, you know what's really weird, and I can't figure it out because I haven't reacted well to COVID. It really annoys me, as it annoys everybody. Well, that's putting it mildly. But for some reason, for the last 2 months, I've been coming up with lots of new stuff. I've finished a new screenplay, a brand new stage play. I've written a play called The Gathering, specifically for Zoom. Now that we're all writing for Zoom, I wrote one for Zoom, and we're going to do that with the Acting Out Company in Newburyport. I'm working on another book, and I have no idea why this is. Maybe it's just I'm so pissed off that I'm sitting down and getting stuff done. But who knows if any of these things will ever see the light of day? But I've actually been doing stuff. Yes.
Yeah, no, I do. I understand that. I mean, I did kind of the same thing with The Lady Slipper.
Yep.
That was created entirely during this COVID time, and I've been doing these online things and an online playwriting course, which has been going pretty well.
Right.
So yeah, kind of staying busy for sure. In a sense, not the kind of busy I think that I wanted to be, but.
No, it's just it has that you have that dread, and you don't really have a really good idea when, I hate to say the word if, but when it's going to come back to some sort of semblance of normalcy. So like I say, I wrote this Zoom play, and it's a whole new thing. And when you write a Zoom, I don't know why I said on Zoom, a Zoom play right now, you can't do it without addressing the pandemic, because why else would you be on Zoom?
Right.
It's just who knew it was going to go on this long, and that those of us who do what we do would be as affected as anybody. I mean, our business has really been, and restaurants, but definitely our business has been shattered. And the other thing is, I'm sure you're aware of this too. When you do a reading on Zoom or something like that, you can get some really damn good actors because they really want to work.
Yeah,
it's just everything is so strange right now.
Yeah, I know it is, and we have a plan in place to reopen the Majestic on January 9th. I've talked about this before, but that's as solid as our plan is at this point. It's contingent upon Charlie Baker getting Massachusetts into phase 4, number one. I think it's also contingent upon a vaccine being available. It's certainly contingent upon Actors Equity. We're probably going to have to do some proposal for them about how we would maintain a safe and sanitary workplace before they allow their members to go to work.
Well, now when you see things in the news now, it's a really big deal when an equity theater gets permission. I think there are only 3 in the country, 3 or 4, and one of them is Northern Stage, where we initiated Trick or Treat, and I'm actually going to direct something for them next month. I'm going to direct Gordon Clapp in a one person play, a Chekhov play, but even those things are restricted. I think I'm going to do it in the theater, but it's going to be streamed. It's not going to be in front of an audience yet. And they have permission to do a small lot, but it's so you have to get permission, and the rules are just so.
Yeah, they have to do like an audience of 50 perhaps, or something, or no more than 50. It's crazy. And yeah, I know our box office systems, WinTix, back in April or early May, I think they developed for us a social distancing performance plan for the Majestic, specifically for the Majestic, because they obviously have our entire seating plan. And we went from 230 seats to 40 seats.
Well, given the Majestic's audience and the way they show up, you'd have to run for like 4 years on one show to get everybody in.
Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, so it's who knows when. I mean, I'm not. I'm hopeful for January 9th, but I'm not convinced that we'll be able to make that date.
Right.
We'll just have to see. You said you're working on another book?
Yeah. this one is I hope is going to be a lot lighter. Well, I mean, Bang Bang Play is not that heavy, but I mean, this is a comic novel, a shorter one called Chicken Legs. So
well,
I've been doing that, yeah.
Since we brought it up, can everybody see this?
There's
is Bang book.
Hey, if nothing else,
Bang Play.
If nothing else, that's a hell of a cover.
It is a hell of a cover, and I finished reading it a couple days ago. It's a terrific story. It's a page turner. I think once you're into that first chapter, and boy, you just go. You just want to keep turning the page and find out what happens next. So,
right.
Hey, how can folks get a hold of a copy, Jack?
Just go to Amazon, put my name in there, and a Bang Bang Play, and it'll show up. Right now, I have 10 reviews. They're all really favorable. If I can get to 15, then I can start marketing on Amazon. So if anybody reads it and gets a chance to go on Amazon and say a couple of nice things and give me 4 or 5 stars, that'd be really nice. And it was my first crack at it, and I think ultimately it would be a nice movie. I think it'd be a fun movie to make. A lot of interesting.
Oh, I do. I agree. Yeah.
It moves real fast. And I set out to write a novel that was mostly dialogue. It didn't really turn out that way, but there's a lot of dialogue in it, because when I read a novel, I go right to the dialogue, because that's what tells the story for me. I'm not really interested in all the description and that kind of stuff. This is a really intellectual response from me, but I'm just telling you the truth. So that's why it seems like it moves really quickly. So thank you. I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you.
Yeah. No, hey, I'd be glad to submit a commentary or review or whatever. How does that happen?
Yeah. Do you ever purchase anything on Amazon yourself?
I'm sure I must have.
Well, for some reason, if you have done that, you can just go to where the book is, and you have a commentary on the bottom. You'll see a whole bunch of them. And now JT read it, and he wanted to give me a nice review, but he never uses Amazon, so for some reason they wouldn't let him do it. Huh. So if you use Amazon, you have an account or something like that, an Amazon account, then they'd take it. That'd be great to have.
Yeah. All right, I will definitely check that out.
Beautiful. And if you can't find it, let me know, and I'll get you on there somehow.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, next question. Where did you grow up?
You're assuming I have grown up.
Yeah, right.
I am from Lowell, Massachusetts, and I went to school there. Went to grammar school there and high school there, and I went to Lowell State College when it was called Lowell State College, before it was called UMass. So I'm a Lowell, Mass boy, and I pretty much stayed there until my mid-20s, when I came out to the Valley and was a grad student at Smith.
Okay, you did the Smith acting MFA.
Yeah, for about, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 years there in the 60s and 70s. I was in the late 70s. They had a program for about 15 guys, and it was great because there you have this women's school. It was pretty essentially a women's school then, and but they could do all plays. They didn't have to do Blood Wedding every week. They did all kinds of plays because we were bouncing from here to there and everywhere, and that gave me the opportunity to when I wasn't doing something at Smith to go over to Mount Holyoke and meet Jim Cavanaugh over there, and did a couple of shows in the Lab Theater, and that evolved to Summer Theater, and that's why I've been out there for 25 years, back and forth all over the place. But I started in Lowell, Mass, and I ended up working a lot in the Pioneer Valley.
Yeah. Getting back to Lowell really quickly, since you mentioned Lowell, every time I think of Lowell, I think of Sacco and Vanzetti, right?
Sacco and Vanzetti, really?
Isn't that the big shoe thing, and isn't that where they were from?
I don't know. Usually when somebody thinks of Lowell, the first thing they think of is Jack Kerouac, and that always pisses me off because my name's Jack too. But I don't know the Sacco and I don't remember that being a Lowell thing. I don't know why. There's Lynn in the back of my head. Lynn? I'm not quite sure. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of their family anyway, so.
Yeah. So, how did you discover your passion for the theater and this life we live?
Well, that's I don't know. When I was growing up, I was absolutely glued to the television, and I didn't watch a lot of the shows that other people watched. I watched variety shows. I was Jackie Gleason, the Hollywood Palace, all those shows. I just sketches and music and things like that. So I just loved it a lot. I actually didn't get involved in theater until college. I didn't act in a play until college. But when I think it was probably, 13 or 14 years old, the Strand Theater in Lowell, the movie theater, did a double feature of The Music Man and this show and movie I'd never heard of called Gypsy. And I went to see The Music Man, and I loved it. And it was raining outside, and I said, "What the hell? I'll stay for Gypsy." And I'll never forget that day for the rest of my life. As I walked out of Gypsy that day, I said, "I got to do that. I have to be involved in this." I just loved the whole feel of putting on a show and those burlesque vaudeville days. And if I have to pin any one day on grabbing some sort of interest for me, it was that day, The Music Man and Gypsy. And Gypsy is now my favorite musical, which I just think is a perfect musical.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, well, it was Smith that got you to the Valley in the MFA program there. But, I remember when I was at Amherst, probably around the same time, because I know that program at Smith was going on at the same time. But, so you had Smith, which was essentially all women, and Amherst, which at that time was all men, and before it was coeducational.
Right.
And so we would get, the Smith girls who didn't get cast at Smith, would come up to Amherst to do plays there.
Well, were you like a student, or were you teaching? What were you doing then?
No, I was a student. Yeah, I transferred in there. When I got out of the Marine Corps in 1970, I started a college career, such as it was, and went first to Holyoke Community College and for a semester and a half, and then I got accepted to Amherst and got a scholarship there. But I went in as a junior and literally spent all of my time at Kirby Theater.
Yeah.
And I was married at the time, living off campus, and I was probably must have been like 25 years old, 26 years old at the time. So I was older than everybody else, married.
So it's like mid-70s?
Yeah.
74?
Yeah.
Did you know?
I graduated 73.
Oh, okay. All right.
So the side to that is I know virtually next to no one from my class.
Did you know Don Howard? Felt the
Yeah.
same
Oh,
thing?
yeah. Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, Don ended up being a grad student at Smith,
Right.
and he directed me in Of Thee I Sing. Oh yeah, I loved Don. Don was a nice guy.
Yeah.
Since passed away, but that sounded like it was about the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Same time. Yeah. Um, so, so let's talk about Mount Holyoke. So, I mean, I think you were very, very much a part of the summer theater there
Yeah. I started there
for many years.
I started there in '76 as an actor, and my first show. I forget how old I was. I don't know, but I was very young. I was playing Mel Edison in The Prisoner of Second Avenue. The first time I was like a million lines, and I was absolutely fearless back then. So you rehearse. The first show rehearsed for like a week and a half. The rest of them just rehearsed for a week. But you'd cram all these lines into your head, and you'd have 2 plays in your head at the same time, and you'd do 7 shows in 7 weeks. And those of us who worked a lot on stage would get 5 roles a summer. It was an absolutely incredible learning experience.
Sure.
You absolutely learned how to make a decision really fast because you started rehearsal on Tuesday and you opened up the next Tuesday. And while you were doing that, you were probably directing something else at night or doing something else. So yeah, I did that straight for 2 or 3 years, and eventually ended up associate producing and producing, and I just was there for a long, 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 long time.
Yeah, and that was so. What happened with Jim? He just got to an age where he retired.
As far as the summer theater is concerned, he was in charge of it through 1980. He did the 30th season, not the 20th season, the 10th season. That's what that was. And then he just decided not to run the place anymore. So Paul O'Connor and John Gracilli and I and Kathy True and Tom McCabe and Susan Daniels ultimately, and I don't know if I'm leaving anybody out. He just entrusted his little baby to us, and he would come back, he'd direct, and he was always right down the street when we had an emergency. Hey, Jim, get up here! Like when the 2 tents came down in a storm one year. But yeah, he just decided to back off a little bit, but he kept directing and he kept acting, but he let the rest of us run it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which running a theater is another entire experience in and of itself.
It's crazy. I used to say I would walk through the door at about 5 minutes to 9 in the morning, and just walk down the stairs. And as soon as I hit the bottom of the stairs, I didn't have to think for the rest of the day what I needed to do, because it just happened. People would attack you with their problems, and I'm sure you know this. The most important thing about being a producer is to know whom to send people to. Somebody comes up with a problem, go over, see that guy, see the guy, see this guy. You don't have to know anything. I shouldn't say that. You just have to. You have to be able
to know where to send them.
Where to send them. So get off my ass. Go over and ask that person. But yeah, and that's another thing. That was a whole different aspect of making decisions, and it's really helped me as a director and as an administrator over the years, because you just can't sit on anything. You have to make a decision and move on, because the shows keep coming on like a runaway train.
Yeah.
But it was great. The audience was great. By the time we got to the mid 70s over there, 77, 70, they were just showing up 350 a night. Well, you know what it's like to have a great audience out here. I mean, these people, once they like what you're doing, they show up, and they respond. I remember we were doing, I think it was All My Sons, and you must have gone to the tent a couple of times in your life to see something. Well,
sure, yeah.
You know what it's we had one of those late afternoon Holyoke thunderbusters, and the whole town was out. The lights were out, everything was dead, and it was getting up to be showtime, which was 8:30 at that time, I think, or 8 o'clock, and we were all huddled in the Buckland dining room, which is where we were waiting to see what was going to go on, but there was no hot power anywhere. And we looked outside. It was getting to be half hour for showtime, and there were, I swear to God, 300 people standing there. It was like a scene from our town. standing there with umbrellas.
Umbrellas, yeah.
Where's the show? Come on with the show. What's the matter with you? So what if the lights are out? So Kavanaugh says, this is unbelievable. He looks over in Chapin, which is the building next to the tent. He says, there's an emergency light on over there. We're going to go over. We took the whole show. We took All My Sons from the tent into Chapin with the emergency lights, built a whole new arena set in there. In about 90 minutes, we sent Tom McCabe down to the basement and to bring the audience down there to tell them stories for 90 minutes. And we set the whole thing up. And about 90 minutes after showtime, we did All My Sons. And that was one of the great, great showbiz stories for me. It was just unbelievable that the audience demanded a show and we just did a show. It was great. It was great.
Yeah. So what happened? What the tent story between the old tent and the new tent?
Well, that was another storm, another major storm, and it was my first year as producer, and we had just closed Death Trap on Saturday, and we were about to open on Monday. We were about to open a Lanford Wilson play, and the title is not coming to me right now. But it had done its Monday night in the tent. The Monday night in the tent was essentially a tech dress rehearsal where you go through the whole thing from beginning to end and get it on its feet just before opening on Tuesday. And we had done that, and the world, the 5th of July was the play, and the skies opened up, hurricane winds. It was like crazy, and there was a mammoth rip in the top of the tent, huge. And we got Kavanaugh out of bed. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. We got everybody up there, and we looked at the hole in the tent. And our Howard Stewart, our technical director, he looked up and he said, "We can't let people into this tent. We just can't do it. It's just too risky." And he was right. So this is a very long story, so I'll just zip to the end. We decided to open the show a day late, but since we were completely sold out, our usual Sunday off we didn't have. We just kept running straight through into the next show, which I think was Gingerbread Lady. I'm not quite sure. And while we were doing the rest of the shows, which involved 2 more shows than we had ever done before, and one of them was Thornton Wilder's The Matchmaker. My God, and The Odd Couple, which I was in as I was being producer. We did all these shows, about 5 shows leading to the end of the season, while the company during the day would take the old tent down and take it apart. I thought they were going to kill me. You remember Phil Kilborn?
No, sure.
Late Phil Kilborn, my great friend. He was out there banging on the tent one day. He was playing Horace Vandergelder in rehearsal at night, and he was playing the Tin Man and the Wizard of Oz, and we're asking him to take the tent down. And I sidled up to him. I said, "Phil, the Matchmaker's in trouble. I think we're going to have to rehearse on Sunday." And he just put his hammer down, and he looked me in the face, and he said, "Jack, if we rehearse on Sunday, I quit." So we didn't rehearse on Sunday because I wasn't going to lose Kilborn at that point. But I can't believe we were able to do everything that we did. But it's a pretty big story for those of us who went through it. My first year as producer, yeah.
You know, talking about Phil Kilborn, I think one of occasionally there are just these moments in the theater that are just kind of implanted in your brain, and they'll always be with you. So I have a Phil one, and it was up at Smith New Century Theater, and it was a play that you adapted, Taming Turn of the Screw.
Yeah, and he had his hair shaved.
He had his head shaved, and when he appeared in the window, you know that moment.
I do.
I jumped.
Well, you know what? That wasn't in the script, and we were in rehearsal, and Sam Rush suggested that. Why don't you open the window at that point and have Phil standing there? I said, great idea. Well, I don't know if Sam's watching or will eventually watch this, but that was Sam's idea, and it was a great idea. And Phil loved stuff like that. He just loved it. Now, Phil had no lines in that play. He was playing a ghost, and but he shaved his head, and he just absolutely loved that moment. But it's interesting that that's the moment you remember.
Yeah. Let me see what we got here. Some notes. Anne Marie Messbauer, Lowell Folk Festival. She mentions.
Right.
Is that familiar to you?
Well, yeah, it's something I've never been to. It's very big in Lowell. I'm sure they probably didn't do anything this summer, but it's just a lot of famous musicians from all over the world show up in Lowell for about, I don't know, a couple of weeks in the middle of the summer, and it's mammoth. It's huge. You can't park anywhere. It's just a big thing. But I know nothing about it. Never been there because I was doing theater out here in the summer. That's what
Right. Right. And we got another little message here from Deb P. Says, thanks for the reminder that your book is on my shelf. I'll read it and review it soon.
Yeah, that's Deb Popple, who said she was going to read it a couple of weeks ago. Come on, Deb, get on it. Deb is a really good friend of mine. She is a composer and a lyricist in New York. We have been working on a show for about a year now called, I'm trying to want to see if I get it right, because I think Larry and Me. But it's a show. I'm not going to go into it, but it's a show about Larry David, a musical about Larry David, and we did a reading of it, a sung reading of it last fall in the city, and Jesus, people really liked it. So if we ever get back on stage, we'll be doing that again. But that's Deb. Deb, read the book, and we'll get back to.
And then I got Chris Thompson. Said her note here, it says Sacco and Vanzetti shoe company was in Braintree.
Yeah, I knew it was not Lowell,
but I think there was a Lowell connection to Sacco and Vanzetti. I don't remember exactly what it was.
Probably had relatives. A very Italian big section in Lowell. What?
Yeah. So New Century. So what was the transition from Mount Holyoke to a New Century, or was there an overlap there? Or?
Yeah, let's see. We started New Century in 1991, and by that time, I had been much more heavily involved as a writer, and I was doing that pretty much exclusively. And Sam Rush was working at Smith, and I had my connection to Smith from my grad school days.
Sure.
We kept looking at this beautiful little air-conditioned theater, the Hallie Flanagan Theater, that nobody was using in the summer. So we said, what the hell? Let's give it a shot. So we did my play, Jerry Finnegan's Sister, which we eventually did at the Majestic. We did my play, Jerry Finnegan's Sister. We had a small but, enthusiastic audience, enough so that it prompted us to come back the next year and do my play First Night. And I forget what the other play was. And that were 2 plays. And then maybe the next year we did 3 plays. Eventually we got up to 3 or 4 plays a year. And our audiences were growing, so he moved it into the big, beautiful theater, Theater 14. And somebody who's very familiar, you guys are very familiar with, Dan Rist, was the technical director and lighting designer over at Smith. So we had access to this brilliant man and his brilliant shop, and he would create these wonderful sets and lighting designs over there. It was a beautiful situation that and New Century. I stayed there as artistic director with Sam producing until '96, and then he took over. But the theater lasted for 27 years.
Yeah,
and I was very proud of what we put together back in the day. Yeah,
I remember, speaking of oh my God, now my brain just went blank.
Yeah,
Phil Kilborn. I really enjoyed the shows down in Hallie Flanagan, actually much more so than I enjoyed the Theater 14 shows, just because of the intimacy,
Well, that's the thing. When we get up to 14, there's 450 seats.
Yeah.
And when you're in there with 100 people or 150 people, which is a nice audience, it still looks half empty,
Sure. Yeah.
So Theater 14 was better, obviously, with the bigger crowds. But I liked Hallie too. I really did.
Yeah. I remember an Inspector Calls with Phil down in the Hallie Flanagan.
Yeah, I directed that. I remember seeing an Inspector Calls. Did you happen to see Inspector Calls in New York around that time?
I didn't.
It was nuts. It was crazy. They had a literal house built on stage, and just so in case the audience didn't get what was going on with the family falling apart, they had the house fall apart.
The house collapses. Yeah.
Oh my God! It was like Why? Because it's a good play. So I just put it on stage as a regular play, and the audience loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I saw that in London actually, and the same thing happened in London with the house collapsing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did. I thought that was a gimmick, and it wasn't wasn't really needed. I mean, it's a cool gimmick, but it's like the play that goes wrong. Have you seen that?
I have not. No.
Well, I don't want to give too much away then, but the entire set collapses at the end of the play that goes wrong. Boom, boom, which makes sense with that play, but it didn't. To me, it really didn't make sense with an Inspector Calls.
Well, I just thought you lost the play in that, and I thought the play was pretty strong, so that's why we did it.
Yeah. How and when did your relationship begin with the Majestic?
Well, that would be
first night, right?
Night, and I don't, because I directed that, so obviously you got in touch with me, and as is the case, you guys, just so you know, Danny always has casting in mind, and I always have casting in mind. So Danny's been very generous with me, allowing me to put my 2 cents worth in here. So I don't know where Steve came from, whether you had the idea or I had the idea, but I had known Steve for a long time, Steve Gagliastro.
Steve Gags, yeah. No, you recommended Gags.
Yeah, and Stephanie lived out here, and I think I know I knew Stephanie at that time, so I said that's a great idea, and they were wonderful together. So that was my first and that was also my first experience with the Majestic and the aura of the place, and I couldn't believe. Well, of course I could believe. I just loved the fact that the audience showed up early, and they hung around in the lobby for a while, and they hung around in the cafe for a while. Then they were all happy when they came into the theater, and there was always 200 plus of them. It was just a great feeling every night to know that your comedy was going to get that kind of a response from that kind of a enthusiastic audience. So that was my first Majestic experience, and that's Steve and Stephanie. It looks like a rehearsal scene, I would think.
Yeah. The I have to tell you, Jack, in some respects, that's you talk about the audience being predisposed before they get into the theater and the play actually starts. I mean, we got this beautiful cafe, and people come in and they go to our box office, and they're welcomed to the theater, and the whole customer service aspect, and then the charm of the cafe, and then maybe a couple glasses of wine on top of that.
Yeah.
So it's true, by the time we open the doors and people go into the theater and the show starts, I think the audience is in a pretty good mood.
Oh, they definitely are, and by that, I'm sure it doesn't happen all the time, but many times you can really tell that a lot of them know each other, or they come to the theater every week, and they have the regular seats on Wednesday, Thursday, and it's just such a great experience for somebody who, I'm sure actors, but for somebody who writes plays, especially plays that are comic oriented, to come into a place like that and to have the audience respond. And after first night went so well, we immediately started talking about. I know we don't have any pictures from this, so I'm jumping at this. Jerry Finnegan's sister.
Right.
That was an interesting casting thing too. We knew we wanted to go with Steve because the audience loved Steve.
They did, yes.
And if you remember this, Dan, I'm sure you do. I brought a friend of mine who had just done Jerry Finnegan's sister for me in Newburyport, Lisa Richardson, and I thought she'd be a shoo-in because she was so great in the show. But for some reason, her audition for us was for you and me was awful. And then you said to me, "Well, I'm really kind of interested in you looking at Sandra Blaney." I said, "Okay, we'll take a look at Sandra." And Sandra Blaney came in.
And you hadn't known her then.
I did not know Sandra Blaney from a hole in the wall, and she blew us away, as she has done at every audition I've ever seen her at, by the way. She's the best auditioning actress I've ever seen in my life. And she was wonderful. And then Steve and Sandra did Jerry Fink Sister for, I think it was 6 weeks. It was a long run. And I directed it, and I was there for the first couple of weeks, and I would come every week or so. And then I remember I came for the second last performance, which was a Saturday night, and they had that thing down like a machine. They were just so in control of the audience. It was unbelievable. I had never heard laughs like that, and it was especially good that night because we had the original actors that I had written the play for. Brian Smith and Beth Schaefer were in the audience that night. That was so cool. What a great night that was. But I was introduced to Sandra then. I've directed her in many, many plays since then, including my play To Forgive Divine and other things of mine. I wrote Trick or Treat for her and Gordon Clapp. And Sandra came up to Northern Stage when we did the original reading for a reading festival they had up there, where the play went so well that they put it in the regular season. But she read it, and I remember sitting. She was nervous. She's going to be reading this play with Gordon Clapp, and I was that's Trick or Treat in New York. I can talk about
New York, yeah.
But she was so nervous about reading this play with Gordon Clapp, and she said, "Do you think he's gonna like me?" And I remember Gordon sitting at that table at the reading, just staring and smiling because she is so damn good. She's a really great actress. And unfortunately, or fortunately for her, but unfortunately for me, she decided, okay, I think I'm going to get married and have some babies now. So when we did it at Northern Stage, she was not able to do it. Sandra, I've written a play that's going to go off Broadway. I wrote it for you. See? But we ended up getting Jenny Putnam fantastic in the show in both cities. So I was very fortunate there. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about Sandra. Sandra and I are great friends. I'm even godfather for a new son, Alfie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are my two experiences there.
Talking about writing a play for Sandra, this play, The Lady Slipper, that I wrote, and we did a Zoom reading of it a while back, a couple weeks back. That was really for Sandra in much the same way.
Does she know that?
I don't know if she knows that. She did it
now, I think.
Maybe so.
I think so.
Maybe so.
Yeah. Well, that was my second experience, and I think the third might have been Jerry and Ed, which is not my play.
That was Steve Henderson's play. That you kind of worked with Steve sort of dramaturgically, and then you ended up directing, right?
Well, I was going to direct it from the start, as far as I know, but yeah, and I don't like. I'm not a big dramaturgical guy, and I don't like people messing with my stuff. So I think we got it into rehearsal, and I would just find moments. There was one huge moment that I thought we really needed to have, and it took Steve 3 seconds to agree. And yeah, I thought I would really like working with those two guys, and the audience loved the show.
Yeah, they did.
So yeah, I remember that. I remember a little bit of dramaturgy, but mostly directing and staying out of their way. That's what I do. I stay out of the way.
That's a good approach. Oftentimes, yeah. Hey, let me see if I got anything else here. This is from who's it, Deb again? She said she can't be trusted. Is her comment?
Okay, I have no idea
what that means. And then it says Larry and me.
Larry and me. What did I say? Me and Larry and Larry?
I don't know.
I've always wanted the title to be something different, but that's because never mind. Let's see. Me and Larry and Larry. Larry and me. Me and Larry and Larry. I think me and Larry is funnier, but that's just me and Larry. Okay, never mind. Okay.
You'll have to fight that out with her.
Yeah. So then my next show at the Majestic was the Porch.
The Porch. Right. Yeah. What inspired? Because that was a little bit of a kind of a change in direction for you, I think.
That was you're right, and it sort of led eventually to Old Lang Syne and eventually to Trick or Treat in terms of writing plays.
Yeah.
That start off with laughs and laughs and laughs and laughs and laughs, and then go a little someplace else. But the play started out. Yeah, that's the porch.
That's the porch. J.T. Waite and Stu Gamble.
Right. Stu was like 19 when he did it. He was very young when he did that. But the origin of the porch was a 10-minute play called Oral Report, which we did at the Boston Theater Marathon. I had my three ladies on the porch, and what Oral Report is eventually turned into the first 10 minutes of the porch. And the reason that the play happened at all was my mother, my late mother, and the late Mrs. O'Neill, and the still at 98 hanging in there, Mrs. Lally, used to sit on Mrs. O'Neill's porch and just look at the world in the Sacred Heart Parish, just watch the world go by and talk about things. And one day my mother walked in the house. I was visiting her. She walked in the house and she said, "Mrs. Lally just explained oral sex to Mrs. O'Neill." And I said, well, I don't think I can get a whole night out of that, but I can get 10 minutes. So I wrote this 10-minute play. And if anybody, well, you know what, the first 10 minutes of the porch caused us has caused me trouble a couple of times. Now at the Majestic, you had some people complaining about it so much so that you had to write a big letter and post it outside the theater as they walked in saying, just hang in there. It's not that bad, whatever you put in the thing. But what it is the first 10 minutes of the porch is a very graphic discussion of three old ladies talking about Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. And the reason it works is because the old ladies are just so innocent. They're just talking about something that they talk about. And so that evolved into two other plays I wrote for the older ladies. Then I added their husbands. And then eventually I put it all together with this little playlet at the end. It all became one play about friendship, but the ending of the play gets to be pretty serious. And if you pull it off correctly, if you have really good actors, which I did at the Majestic, then audiences really have a good time.
Yeah, I seem to remember that. Interestingly enough, it wasn't so much about the beginning of the play and the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky thing, but more the end thing with the pedophilia and the priest. Yeah, that was
son of a gun. Well, I get
more of a kind of reaction to.
Yeah, well, that was around the time of the well, I wrote it in mid 80s. No, I wrote it in the mid 90s. What am I talking about? And the priest scandal was huge. And I kind of addressed it, but not in a different kind of way. But I did have the very outspoken character who was based on Mrs. Lally, who was still alive. I had that outspoken character just saying very hardcore things about what should happen to the Catholic Church if they want to stay alive. And they were my ideas. I mean, I wanted to say this through to this character. And maybe I didn't know that was what was. I always thought it was the first 10 minutes. Who knows?
Yeah. All right, and I mean, you're a writer, and I mean, most people know you as a writer and a director, but you're also an actor.
I try.
Right. What shows have you performed in? And you've done some film work.
I've done a little film work. I really started out as an actor, and I did most of my work back in the day at Mount Holyoke. I did so many shows there, and strangely enough, interestingly enough, in 1984, I developed an absolutely serious, scary case of stage fright. And it just developed because I actually read a line in a review, which I shouldn't have done, that affected me so strongly that it's never left me. And that's 30 years ago. My God. But ever since, and before that time, as I said, I was fearless. I was absolutely fearless. And I could memorize anything. I still can memorize, but I don't trust myself anymore. And anytime I do a part on stage, which has really diminished in the last 20 years, I cover my ass is what I'm essentially just as an example, Guys and Dolls.
Yeah.
I did Guys and Dolls at the Majestic, and that was the first show I had done in probably 10 or 15 years. And we did it 40 times. 40 times. And I'm sure people noticed it, but I had you can probably see it. I think you can see it in the solo picture of me, but I had a newspaper in my right-handed pocket, a racing form in my right-handed pocket. And I had every line in the show on that racing form.
Just in case.
I did the show 40 times, and I never looked at it because I didn't have to. But I swear to God, if that thing fell out of my pocket, I don't know what I would have done. I didn't need it for the songs. I mean, the songs I just knew very, very well. But I've been using that kind of. I did 10 Little Indians. I had a little notebook. Yeah, there it is. There's my line right there. So I've always carried a little something to just sort of get myself through it, and that's only since I developed the stage fright. And stage fright is a kind of a scary thing. People think it's the fear of performing in front of people. That's not really is. It's the fear of stopping when you're up. That's what that is. And I don't like to talk to actors about it because I don't want to put it in their heads. But once it gets there, it's tough. It's tough.
Do you recall that line from the review that
yeah, it was some guy out in Western Mass. He's probably still there, although I hope he's dead. I mean, but you know what it was? It was Of Mice and Men. Now I played George in Of Mice and Men in a week. And if you play George in Of Mice and Men and you highlight the lines, you might as well just take a yellow paintbrush and paint the whole, because he just talks and talks and talks. But it was there. I got it all in my head, and I was producing at the same time. And I got it all in my head. And I went out there with Michael Walker. You probably know Michael Walker.
He was Lenny?
Michael Walker playing Lenny. Gloria Muzzio directed it. And I went out there on opening night and it went fine. It went fine. All the reviews were great. But one guy decided to stick a little note in there that said something like, it looked like Jack Neary was struggling for his lines a couple of times. What I wanted to scream at the guy is, I was acting, you asshole. I was acting. Couldn't you see that? But it stuck in my head. And I went out that night after the show, and I stopped 4 times. And every time I did, Michael Walker, playing Lenny, had to say things like, well, George, do you think you should, and he would sort of cue me into the next line.
Yeah.
Now, nothing that scary has ever happened again. But just going through that once has made me so unsure of myself out there. And it's annoying because I think I was a pretty decent actor back in the day. And I think I still can pull things off. But I'm not as comfortable as I used to be.
That's funny, huh? I remember, years ago, this is probably in our second or third season. You're talking about reviewers. We did a production of Blood Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
And hugely popular with the audiences, And I remember, every night the audience was on their feet applauding, and I remember getting a review, and I was excited to have a reviewer there because we don't often get reviews, to be honest with you, and I never really cared too much about getting reviews because I figured, it's the customers that count. Anyway, so this review came out, and it said, well, what do you do, when you're at the theater and you're watching a show, you've been assigned to review it, and the show comes to an end, and the audience is the actors come out for a curtain call, and the audience is on their feet, and they're cheering and clapping and whistling, and you hated the play. That's how the review opened,
Well, I got to at least give him credit for acknowledging that. I've had bad reviews where that is not where it goes well, the audience has a good time, but it's not acknowledged in the paper. At least whoever that was acknowledged that, which was good. But, me and critics, let's not get into that.
No. Hey, so we get this question all the time. Whenever we've done a talk back live with an audience, they always ask, and it's interesting because I've been asking everybody on these Behind the Curtain episodes, how they answer this question, and it's interesting a lot of different kind of answers. But here's the question: how do you learn all those lines? Do you have a particular process?
Do I have a particular process? I have a story about that. But in terms of learning lines, I'll write them down over and over and over and over again. I'll just I'll put a tape recorder in the car and I'll listen to it that way. Just the basic way. I remember when I went into Guys and Dolls, and I never lifted up my script. I don't know if anybody noticed that, but I never carried my script in Guys and Dolls because I was absolutely cold on the lines when I arrived there. I recommend that, by the way. A lot of actors say, "Well, I'm going to wait for my blocking and things like that."
Yeah.
I just think it's really good to go into, especially a short rehearsal, off book. Gordon Clapp does that, and it's very, very important. But as far as the actual how do you learn all those lines line is concerned, I actually have a play, a 10-minute play called Talkback, and we did it at the Boston Theater Marathon about 10 years ago. And what I planted about 7 people in the audience, and they were all great Boston actors. And I put Andy Dolan, Andy Dolan. I put Andy Dolan on stage as a playwright, and it was a talkback. It was a 10-minute play I wrote called Talkback, and they asked all the questions that they always ask at talkbacks, except I decided not to ask that one. I decided that's the one that mostly is asked, and I decided not to ask that one. But that is the question that everybody. I think it's because they're often, the audience members are often so impressed that they don't know what to say. But that is a very specific question that they can actually relate to. They see you up there with all these words just being spewed out of your mouth, and how do they stay up there? It's just a matter of connecting one word to the next, one sentence to the next, and all that. It's a process, but audiences are often so fascinated by that.
Yeah. And the fact that, what do they say? One of the greatest fears that people have is speaking in front of others.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that plays into it at all. How about what's the hardest show that you've been involved with, either as a writer or director or an actor?
I have all those questions written down here, and I looked at my notes for this one. I don't have anything. I guess maybe I've never had a difficult show. That's really kind of hard to. I think there are moments in each show, especially big shows, that are harder. But I don't know one entire show. I mean, I've had a couple of shows with smaller casts, 1 or 2 people, where one of the actors is wrong, and I don't want to name names. So that is difficult, especially when. I got to admit this. I'm terrible in a rehearsal room as the writer and director. I'm good, but I'm terrible if things aren't going well. And I will make little annoyed noises. An actor will be up there and he'll make a mistake, and I'll go, oh. So I've had moments like that, but I can't think of one mammoth show that just completely fell apart. When I did, do you know a play called Light Up the Sky? Moss Hart.
Moss Hart, yeah.
Yeah, it's like Hart without Kaufman. So it's like a decent play, but it doesn't have the comic energy that the Kaufman and Hart plays have. But I remember we did it over at Mount Holyoke, and on Monday night, John Grosselli, who was the producer, invited a busload of, for some reason, it was a Jewish club or something like that. It was like 80 people, and they showed up on Monday night and for our dress rehearsal, and they laughed their heads off from beginning to end. So we were all set. We're ready to go out there. And Tuesday night, we'd go out there in front of our regular audience, and it was crickets all night. So that was the most devastating night I can remember in the theater. And like it's 30 years later, and I'm still seeing some of these actors, and they're still holding it against me, like it was my fault. That it probably was. I don't know. But since that time, I've directed it again over at New Century, and it went much, much, much better. But I don't have a big catastrophe except for that opening night of Light Up the Sky.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, people ask me quite often, what's the favorite show that you've produced or directed or written, and I have to say I don't have one. Maybe the last one or the next one will be the favorite.
Otherwise, why don't we do this? Yeah. It's the one we're doing now or the one that's coming up next. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I don't know if this next question means anything. It's like your favorite show outside of the Majestic.
That's impossible. I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, right.
I just don't know. I've had a lot of really great experiences as an actor back in the day, and a lot of great experiences as a playwright, even as a director. So it's impossible to pull that out. Man, that's another one of these questions I didn't have an answer written down here for.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hey,
there's the movie.
there's a movie. Yeah, we can talk a little bit about that.
Did we put the town up yet? Well, that's Black Mass. That's Johnny Depp. I was that was a great job because I was hired for a week. Anybody who's in SAG and knows you get a week's worth, that is fantastic. Except they shot all my stuff in 2 days, so I got paid for a week and they shot it in 2 days. But it was great. They shot it. They did a facsimile of Whitey Bulger's bar, Triple O's, and I was the bartender all day. A lot of great actors. Jesse Spielman, who not Peelman, who is an actor these days, getting a lot of work, was in that scene, and so was Johnny Depp, and it was just fun. Depp was really nice. He was a nice guy to everybody. He was walking around looking like Whitey Bulger, and you were supposed to call him Jimmy on the set. Now, that was Whitey Bulger's real name, but he wasn't pulling one of these actor things and staying in character. He was just being a nice guy. But that was a blast. That was just 2 days on the set with all kinds of things. So I can say I've been in a movie with Benedict Cumberbatch. Oh, this is me looking frightened, which I do really well as an actor. If anybody needs anybody to look frightened, this is me doing that. And that is me looking at Ben Affleck as he's coming in to possibly kill me in the town. And Ben, God bless him, gave me like 3 or 4 seconds of a close-up on that. I remember I went to the premiere of that. I brought my friend Sandra Blaney came with me, and it was at Fenway Park. They set up a huge screen between third base and home, and there were about 2,000 of us sitting in the left field grandstand, and that was the premiere of the town. But that was that, and Affleck was the director. And I remember I spent the 2 days there. And I spent that saying, who is that little guy running around in the scene with Ben Affleck? Who the hell is that guy? I never saw that. And it was Jeremy Renner, who had either just won an Oscar or was about to win an Oscar. I forget. But yeah, that was another fun time. I remember Affleck was the writer, producer, director, and actor. He was running around doing everything. And he was also very nice to me.
Do you have a kind of a pre-show routine as an actor that you go through?
You mean you don't know this? You never showed up a half hour before Guys and Dolls? I showed up for Guys and Dolls. Nobody in the cast ever saw me getting into my costume. I was in my costume when everybody showed up. I did that from the first performance to the end. I would do the same thing every night. This is a result of the stage fright. I need to get into these routines. I would put on my costume. I would go up and walk in the back of the theater and run my lines. And then I know as you saw this, I sat in the same place backstage, every show, every act, every scene for 40 performances. I never changed it to the point where people will get upset if I didn't happen to be there right on time. And so, yeah, I mean, I have an absolute crazed routine when I'm an actor, and it usually means half hour I'm out of the dressing room and I'm hiding someplace.
Yeah, I certainly remember you being the first one in costume.
Oh God.
Yeah,
absolutely. It almost looked like I wore it home and just wore it back.
Yeah, it could be. How about any interesting audience feedback after a show? Or
I can't remember many things. I remember one show. We were doing Jerry Finnegan's Sister once in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, St. Vincent College down there, and I was directing it, and it was Pittsburgh, just outside of Pittsburgh, and the Penguins, the hockey team, were in the final game of the Stanley Cup the night of a show. That's just wonderful. This final game of the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
So every guy that was in the audience that night had the little thing in his ear. Every guy had a little earplug. And I remember during the show's going on, and I happened like 3 or 4 times. I'd hear score. Score. So yeah, but that's the only weird thing I can remember. And we did have a couple of people giving us grief about the first 10 minutes of the porch in Stoneham, but I had never had any crazy stories about.
Yeah. How about stage bloopers?
No. I guess I've been blessed. I don't have a whole. Well, I have something that's kind of like in between a blooper and an interesting experience. Do you know? Have you ever seen Agnes of God?
Yeah, sure.
Really tight little thriller that John Peelmeyer wrote, and we did it over at Mount Holyoke in the tent. Very intense, very intense.
Right.
And Molly Meeker and Diane Gary were having this intense psychologist nun conversation, and I'm standing outside the tent, 300 people in there, and it's a beautiful summer night. Everything's quiet, and this cop drives up to the tent, and he gets out of his car and he says, "I got to see Bill Peterson." I'm making up the name. I got to see Bill Peterson. I said, "Well, do you really? He may be in here. I don't know. I need him now." Well, the show's going on. I can't do anything about it. I need Bill Peterson, and I need him now. Okay. So, like an idiot, instead of going to the stage manager and bringing the lights down, I just walked up to the top of the ramp and I started walking down. And they're in the middle of this intense, crazy scene. And I said, Molly, can you stop just a second? And we stopped the show. And Molly is just panicked out there beyond her belief. And I said, "Is Bill Peterson in the audience?" He turned out to be the guy at the top of the ramp that I came down and standing right next to me. I could have gone just tapped his shoulder and got him out of there, but I didn't know. Turned out the poor guy's father had died, so we needed to get him out of the tent. But in retrospect, I wish I had more clever about figuring what to do with that. But I don't have bloopers, and I don't have any weird comments that I can recall.
Yeah. All right, one final question, Jack. So, what advice would you give to, folks who aspire to be a part of this life we live?
Well, the first thing you do, you should have thought of this long before COVID. You should have thought of it long before COVID. And I don't know. I remember I asked my theater professor back at UMass Lowell years and years ago. His name was Gardner Tilson. I said, "Hey, Gardner, you think I should do this?" And he said, "I'm not going to tell you that. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it. And if you're not going to do it, you're not." And that's pretty much it. For somebody who aspires to do this as a lifestyle, you have to know going in how difficult it is and the sacrifices that you have to make. And you have to know that if you're in it for a long time and somebody asks you, "Well, what would you do if you couldn't do this?" If your answer is, "I don't know. This is what I can do. This is what I want to do. I can't think of myself doing anything else," then you belong doing this. Otherwise, if you think maybe you should do something else or can do something else, and that's absolutely fine. You're really smart if you do that. Do it. Do something else.
Do something else.
Be in community theater. But if you're going to commit to this for a lifestyle, you know it. You absolutely know it.
Yeah. Well, good advice. Let me see if we got any more comments here. Deb says you lost that battle, Jack. That has to be about Larry and me.
Yeah, I did. I lost that battle, even though I'm right. I did lose that battle.
And Anne Marie says, I remember at intermission you sat by yourself too, not goofing off like everyone else.
Yeah,
Guys and dolls. Yeah.
I set up camp, stage left, backstage in that chair. I think people were scared to sit in that chair, in fact, because that's where I belonged. My brain had to be involved in the show from beginning to end. It just had to be.
Yeah.
But I had a great time, by the way. I loved doing Guys and Dolls. I never thought I would get a chance to sing those songs. I never got to get a chance to sing "Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat" with that kind of an audience, with that kind of a cast. I had a great time.
Yeah, it was great. Let's see, Karen Tarzan.
Oh yeah, Karen.
If you're going to do it, then you're going to do it. Miss working with you, Jack.
Karen Kruger Taryan was a Mount Holyoke student and theater worker from where she's in Chicago now. She's been working in Chicago for a long time. Yeah. Love Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hey, Karen. Thanks for turning in. Okay, Jack, this has been great. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad we
I
we
hope I
got
didn't
through it.
I hope I didn't say anything too stupid.
No.
We're not too stupid. Okay.
Hey, remember, folks, next week are Behind the Curtain at the Majestic with Frank Aronson. And what else? Carly, turn it back over to you, I think.
Turn back over to me. You always put all the pressure on right at the end. No, Jack, that was so true what you said, that, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it. I, had the same mentality when I graduated college. I just knew I'm not going to do anything else.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's it.
It's a
Cool.
blessing and a curse.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. Well, until next week. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.